My name is Hannah, and this is my beauty budget. Hey y'all, so I'm sitting down to film some videos featuring my collection of single shadows, and I'm really excited to do this because as my year of budgeting has worn on, I have found myself more and more drawn to single shadows as the source of the most delight when it comes to eyeshadow. I think I really enjoy curating my own color stories. I really enjoy having the power to make my own decisions about what I put next to another thing in a pan, and I really like how intensely loved on a single shadow can get because there's only one of it and it only represents one thing, as opposed to larger and more complex makeup items like palettes, which tend not to show as much wear over the same amount of time. I really love single shadows, so I'm ready to kind of dig in, and what I'm doing today is I'm going to do the if I could only keep 10 challenge with my single shadows. So I haven't even thought about this yet. Like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it here on camera. I'm going to make the decisions here on camera. And I also haven't decluttered my shadows yet. That's something I'm about to film, and that video will go up soon. I'm going to declutter my single shadows. When I originally started thinking about it, I thought obviously I'll declutter them first, then I'll have this beautiful curated collection, and then I'll decide if I could only keep 10, what would they be? But I thought about it some more and I decided to do this first because I think that one of the things I like about doing these challenges, like ranking my makeup and if I could only keep 10 and what are my favorites and all of this stuff, is that it helps me to be more realistic about how much makeup I really need. Because when I distill it down to the 10 that are my favorites, then I can really have something to hold on to when I'm deciding whether or not to keep other eyeshadows that I feel less excited about. Mediocre things seem a lot less appealing to keep in my collection when I actually have like the 10 best of the best sitting there and I've already decided what they are and I've talked about them and shown them on camera, etc. So this is going to be the first step. I'm going to create my perfect little collection of 10 if I could only keep 10. And then I will go on to declutter my collection in a future video, stacking my feelings about all of the rest of my eyeshadows up against my feelings about the 10 that I choose in this video. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. So I'm going to zoom out and sort of try to open everything up and see if I can get everything or almost everything in frame. If you watch me and you follow me closely, you will know that these aren't my only magnetic palettes, but I've recently consolidated all of my single shadows into these magnetic palettes. So I do have some empty magnetic palettes languishing. I may or may not make use of them. I may use some of them to declutter some of these when I decide to pass them along. For now, this is everything that I have when it comes to single shadows. Goodness gracious, I zoomed out and my gluten-free beer came into frame. I feel like I've been exposed. A scandalo. Okay, so we have gotten everything into frame. These are my shadows from Cliona from the Stained Glass collection. They're all here in this little Makeup Geek palette. These right here, these square ones, this beautiful tiled floor of eyeshadow, these are all the newly released single eyeshadows from Adept Cosmetics. I should rephrase, this is not the entire collection. These are just all of the ones that I have. And then everything else is all mixed in together. Those are the only two places where I have like all from one brand in a single palette. And so here I've got my big giant palette from Adept that's a mix of things. A lot of my singles are ColourPop, and the big round ones are either JD Glow or Depotted Juvia's Place shadows. And then I have the entire Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette depotted. Some of them have been decluttered, but some of them are mixed in here. And then there are some from Luxie and Makeup Geek that have been sent to me by subscribers, and a couple of other random things mixed in. If any of it becomes relevant to this video, I'll tell you as we go. But that's kind of the general shape of things. And then this little drawer, pulled out acrylic drawer, I have all of my single shadows that are contained in their own packaging. I decided to include them in this video, but I decided not to include liquid shadows. And that's partly because I just didn't feel like it, because I don't feel as fond of liquid singles as I do of powders. I only have a handful. I think I only have 4 liquid eyeshadows in little single tubes. I mean, I only have 4 liquid eyeshadows altogether. But I also can easily tell you that if I were only keeping 10 single shadows, none of those 4 would make the cut. So I don't feel like it's even worth including them in here because it's such a different type of category. Okay, I'm gonna have at it. I think there's probably about to be a long stretch of this video where I am just making decisions silently and trying to sort things out. I think what I'll probably do is I will pick out everything that I think might actually be in the running, see how many of them there are, and then check in with you when it comes time to distill that group of runners up down to the 10 winners. Okay, before I put everything away, I think I've got the runners up. I think I've got them. But I just wanted to quickly sort of talk through some of the revelations I had or the interesting things that I discovered as I was doing this before I close everything away and kind of forget about it. I could have narrated as I was going through, but I think if I had done that, I would have never gotten through it. The first thing I have to say is that indie eyeshadows are where it's at. Indie eyeshadows. And I think that in this situation, I'm only really stacking them up against ColourPop and Morphe, I guess, although I didn't really, I think, swatch any Morphe shadows, although there is one that I think might make it through. I'm particularly talking about ColourPop's duochromes, which are really beautiful. They've done a really good job. So here's Mr. Sandman right here, and I also swatched Glass Bull, which has gotten a ton of wear from me. Like, you can see that these shadows are very well loved. Tea Garden has a huge dip in it. I can actually see that Tea Garden is the most used of the 3 of those. Kind of at this point famous duochromes by ColourPop, because when they first started coming out with them, it was really, really exciting. So there's Mr. Sandman, Glass Bull, and Tea Garden, and they are really, really pretty. But when you start looking at eyeshadows from indie brands that have anything in common with those, like even this shadow from Adept, which is not as intensely a duochrome, but just look at like the sheen that it has and the longevity, literally. Like I know that that's not what longevity means, but like look how much more pigment it has. Like, I wrapped it all the way around my arm with probably a swatch that was less intense. And if you look at something like Glass Bull up against these similar shadows from Cliona and JD Glow, they're just like, the shine on them is just like blowing it off the water. And then they also have that richness and that duochrome quality. So just doing this, I kind of have reconceived of my ColourPop duochromes basically as toppers. You know, sheeny, sheer washes of color, much, much less intense than what I tend to go for, and of course, much less intense than what I would choose to keep if I could only keep 10. So that was really interesting. The other thing that really surprised me, this was one of my most surprising moments, was when I swatched these two stunning shadows. Like, I'm in love with these from Sydney Grace, Defiance and Herky Bird. They're in there, they're in the running. They're these rich greens. And then I swatched these two rich greens from Adept next to them, and the pigment and the shine on those two just really surprised me. I mean, I think of Sydney Grace and Looksy as having these like really, really rich, uber pigmented formulas. And I've loved playing with these Adept shadows. I've been really impressed by them, but I kind of didn't realize until this moment how well they're stacking up against the other indie singles that I have. Like, I love them, but I'm sort of predisposed to be fond of them. Like, I know I've been corresponding with the owner. She sent them to me. I have an affiliate code with them. Like, I wanted to love them, and I was really, really glad that I did end up loving them. And in this moment where I compared these four greens to each other, like, look at the shine on that, the more forest green one on the bottom. I was just like, whoa. Like, I basically had this moment where I was like, I haven't been fooling myself. Like, these are really, really impressive, really stunning. So that was a really cool discovery. What else? Oh, I did want to mention that I did put ColourPop Dragonfly here on the table, and this is another one that I've long loved, which is Urban Decay. I think it's Midnight Cowgirl. I'm not sure how Midnight Cowgirl will do, but I think that ColourPop Dragonfly, which was one that in the back of my mind I thought I would be keeping, I think it might be edged out by Adept ACS 17 for the same reason. Like, here's the ColourPop shade. I'm trying to get a really good swatch. I know that some of you hate it when I like dig into my eyeshadows, but this is just how I am. It's how I've been since I was a little girl. It's how I am with paint and crayons and markers, and it's how I am with eyeshadow and with makeup of every kind. I just really, really dig into it. I'm not afraid to get my hands into it and to be messy and to layer it. Anyway, that's Dragonfly, which is another one. It's like one of my all-time favorite ColourPop shadows for an all over the lid look. And then this is my new love, which is the one from Adept ACS 17, and you can see that it's browner, and it's also just got more depth. It's got that like sheen in it, and the finish is beautiful, and that's the finish I want on my eyes. It's a little bit less matte. It's like satin plus. There was one other thing that I forgot to say when I was kind of doing a recap of my initial process, which is that this shadow, Urban Decay Lounge, I wanted to see how it compared to this Adept shadow, which is one that I've been using a lot lately. I recently demonstrated the use of this one as like a topper in the middle of the lid. ACD6. It's like the blue-brown pigment of this collection. You can see how Urban Decay Lounge is like so much deeper and richer and more pigmented, and the Adept one is more of a topper. It's more like ColourPop Glass Bull, which isn't, I mean, I think Glass Bull is the lightest of the three of them, the least brown and the least blue, but you can kind of see that it has the same kind of quality. So that's Urban Decay Lounge. That's the Adept shadow that has similar tones, but a totally different finish, more of a sheen, and is much more like the ColourPop toppers. So I had been thinking of these as being kind of similar. I had been thinking of them as both being kind of like that blue-brown pigment. Well, it turns out the Adept one that I've been using is really, really a sheer shadow. It's really, really a topper. So as much as I enjoy using it, I wasn't about to even like put it in the running as my blue-brown pigment of choice next to Adept or next to Urban Decay Lounge, because Urban Decay Lounge is just so much richer and more dramatic of a shadow. And if I could only keep 10, that's the kind of thing that I'm going for. I feel like when it comes to toppers, if I could only keep 10, I'm also going to be keeping like really, really intense, more intense toppers, like these ones from Cleona, which aren't necessarily designed to only be toppers, but can be used as such in the middle of the lid. And again, if we're getting down to brass tacks, then it's going to be these instead of either of those two more sheer ones in the middle. So I thought that that was really interesting, because a lot of times we like think of shadows as being similar to each other, and then when you swatch them next to each other, it turns out that they're really different. Or as in the case of these two, you think of them as being different and then they turn out to be similar. So that's part of why it's fun to sit down and do this kind of thing. So I have 26 runners up, and I'm telling myself that I can only keep 10. So I'm going to have to cut this down by way more than half. And as you can see, there are little color groups, color categories. So it's not like it's an impossible task. I'll end up choosing one of three in many of these color families. But I also did want to point out that there are some, I mean, it's obvious, there are some color families that aren't covered here. And for my purposes for this exercise, I'm not trying to make a collection of 10 shadows that would cover like any situation. I'm telling myself if I could only keep 10 single shadows, but then I also have my palettes and I have other stuff. So I'm not looking at this collection and thinking, wait a second, there's no like basic bronze copper. So if I only had 10 and then I wanted to do a copper eye, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'm not thinking about it that way. I'm thinking about which 10 are my favorite. Like I'm not trying to think about covering all my bases. I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that I'm not being practical here. I'm just choosing like my 10 crown jewels, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and address these. Gosh, let's address them kind of one color category at a time. Well, no, you know what I want to do instead of addressing one color category at a time is to pick out the ones, and this might actually be it. This might actually finish it. Just to pick out the ones that I know are going to make it. Like the ones that are sure things now that I've narrowed it down. And the first one is this one from Rowan. And I knew that I was going to be making my job harder when I decided to include this type of product in here, because I knew that I would not be willing to part with this. It is the Summer Disco Shadow by Rowan, and it's a very strange sort of creamy, flaky, layered formula with a lot of micas in it and a good bit of like a warm golden pigment. And I use this shadow all the time. I've talked about it and demonstrated it a number of times on my channel. You can see how it's got kind of like a base of a semi-sheer pigment, and then it's got a ton of super flaky micas that make like a really textured surface. And I like this because it's very beautiful on its own all over the lid. It's a little bit drier than the lid illumes, so a little bit less prone to creasing, but it's also sheer enough that I can put it on my brow bone as the shadow that I use to kind of obscure or blend the line between my lid and crease shade and my brows, basically. And I end up using this for that a lot too. So this is a really, really useful shadow for me. I've only had it for a couple months, and I don't know if you can see there's like a huge dip in it. I will be hitting pan on this pretty soon, I'm sure, because it just has never left the top of my vanity since I bought it. So if I could only keep 10 single shadows and I was including like little single package shadows like this is the first one that I would pick. So now I'm down to 9 spots. At this moment in time, I think I can safely say that this one, ACS 17 by Adept, is my second pick, and it's going to oust ColourPop Dragonfly. And up until I acquired this shadow from Adept, ColourPop Dragonfly always came with me when I traveled in single shadow or in like little palettes and stuff like that, because it's just, for me, it's like the perfect all over the lid grungy sort of deep, I don't know, like deep grungy, not too cool toned eye. I think Dragonfly looks a little bit more purple, and the one from Adept, I believe on the website they classify it as a brown, which does make sense to me, a brown with kind of some reflex in it of maybe blue and maybe a little bit of purple as well. And I prefer the more neutral color, so it makes sense that I would pick this one over this one. But this sort of almost purple smoky brown is a really good, it's almost like if I could only keep one and use it as my single lid shade for the rest of my life, it would be this. Like it's just a really, really good neutral shadow for my coloring and for my eye color. So there's the one that I'm keeping. and I'm saying I'm keeping from Adept. And here they are again next to each other. So there's ColourPop Dragonfly and there's Adept AC17. Okay, let's look at some other favorites that I know I would have a really, really hard time not including in this list. So this is JD Glow Unexpected. Again, I don't know how you can see, right? Can you see that enormous dip in the pan? This is one of my most used eyeshadows. Historically, I've called it my favorite eyeshadow of all time. These two used to be my two most extraordinary eyeshadows, kind of far and away. They were like truly the most unique, and there was nothing else like them in my collection. And since I received these from Clionadh, the stained glass glitter multi-chromes, now there's several shadows in my collection that do similar things, but I still feel like nothing tops JD Glow Unexpected. So that's this one right here that has the huge dip in it. And it's partly just because I've had it for so long. I feel like even if there were a total dupe for it in the Clionadh Multi-Chromes collection, which there might be, I'm going to swatch around a little. Even if that were true, I don't think that I would be willing to let that one go if I could only keep 10. Good God is also incredibly beautiful, but it's just, I don't know, it gives me a little bit more of that like unicorn look because it's got so much blue in it. And I think it's incredibly beautiful, but I think if I could only keep 10, I would pass up that kind of blue shifting look. And it's also the reason that I didn't include Clionadh Glimmer in my bunch, because Clionadh Glimmer is also, it's like truly extraordinary. Like, look at that glitter. It's more similar to the JD Glow one. It's got that blue reflect. It's more similar to Good God. But that intense kind of bluey purple sheer white reflect, even though I find it useful and I do use these two shadows a lot, it's just not like top 10 favorite status for me in terms of color. But this one with a little bit more of a gray, grungy taupe undertone, this one is. So I'm going to say that I can let go of Good God for the purposes of this little exercise and just have Unexpected be the JD Glow shadow that I keep. So here's Clionadh Carving. Here's Clionadh Chandelier, and here's again Good God. So right away I can see that Clionadh Carving is close enough to Unexpected, sorry, not Good God. It's close enough to Unexpected that it doesn't need to stay if I'm keeping this one. And I don't know, this one here in the middle, this like chandelier with that kind of like greeny reflect, that's different from everything else I have here on the table. So let's leave that one up on the table, but let's talk about these golds. JD Glow 365, and here we have Clionadh Corrosion. If I could only keep 10, it wouldn't make sense to keep both of these because they are so similar. So there's the one from JD Glow, and there's the one from Clionadh, which just has more green in it. It's just got more green, and the one from JD Glow is definitely decidedly gold. And in all other ways, they kind of they kind of look the same. That is a really hard decision for me to make though, because I really love this warm, almost honey-colored gold, and I really love this gold with the green undertone as well. But what I will say is that I have been reaching for the one with a little bit of green in it, the one from Clionadh, more. And I think that I am more inclined to want to make a look with a little bit of a greeny gold shift than to make like a honey colored gold look. So I'm gonna say Clionadh Corrosion stays, and I can let JD Glow 365 go. Whew, that was a tough one though. That's a really beautiful shadow for me. I think if I could only keep 15, I'd probably include both of them. But if I can only keep 10, I only really need one that gives this effect. And I think that the one with a slight green shift, that's it for me. Oh my gosh, I've already filled 4 spots. This is so stressful. So these are the other two from Clionadh that I swore to myself when I even got the ghost of the idea for this video that I would include in my top 10. This is Abrasion, and this is Grisaille. And I'm just going to go ahead and put them here. I was thinking I'd line up the 10, but I'll swatch them at the end. I'm running out of room. So here's Abrasion, which is the bluey purpley one. And here's Grisaille, which is the one that has kind of like a red shifting base underneath it. Let's look at them next to this one, which is depotted from a Juvia's Place palette. And this is a shadow that I think of so fondly and I reach for all the time, and I would miss it so much if it were gone. I just love putting this all over my eyes. It's like the perfect creamy, simple, like I feel like if I put this all over my eyes, which it's weirdly has similar undertones, it's just much more glimmery and glittery and special. If I put that all over my eyes, it's like, whoa, glitter bomb, and I love that. But this is like the perfect balance in every quality in terms of like texture, shine, creaminess, glitteriness, duochrominess, because it is a bit of a duochrome. It's a bit of like a red to orange or red to gold. I definitely would want to keep that if I could only keep 10. I can say that for sure. I kind of want to look at Blaze. I put this in here because I've been reaching for it a lot. It's another one of the Clionadh glitter multi-chromes. Okay, I've been reaching for Blaze a lot, but swatching it next to all these other ones, it's just not as compelling to make it into my 10. So I'm gonna go ahead and let that one go. I really, really find this useful, but it's like it's useful as a topper and a finisher and not as like the total star of the look. So phew, that's good. And you know what? I think that, so this is the Shine Fix Eyes in Romantic Floor. It's one of the K-Beauty products I've been trying out. And I have been wearing this a lot. Like I reach for it a lot, and it's an amazing go-to all over the lid eye look for me. And I would be loath to let it go if I could only keep 10. But now that I'm seeing what a difficult decision I have to make with all of these other guys, I think that I can probably say that if I could only keep 10, I wouldn't keep it. But I need to decide about Abrasion and Grisaille. I feel like they're similar enough that it wouldn't be both of them. And if I'm totally honest, I think Grisaille, the one with the red base, even though you can kind of see here on my arm that if I were to lay down this Juvia's Place shadow and then put Abrasion on top of it, I would get the same effect. I'm trying not to think of it in those practical terms. I'm just trying to think of like my absolute favorites. And of all of the Clionadh multi-chromes of the entire collection, Grisaille is my single favorite. It's just the one that I love the most. If I could only keep one of the Clionadh shadows, it would be this one. So I'm going to say that that one makes it in. And I think that that means that it would be kind of redundant to keep Abrasion. I'm going to keep it up here just like I am with Chandelier, but I can tell you already that I think that these are the two spots that are going to be holding down the fort for Clionadh. Oh my gosh, there are only 4 spots left. How can I even do this? So I've gravitated towards talking about the really bright, intense shades first and making those decisions first. And now I need to decide about these grungy shadows. I think I need to decide among them. Oh, already I can kick out Midnight Cowgirl from Urban Decay because I think that even though it's much lighter and brighter, keeping this one serves that same purpose. It's just a shadow I've loved for a really long time, like a sort of like a pale shimmery mauve with glitters in it. But I definitely wouldn't keep it if I could only keep 10. So that's out. Let's look at these greens. So we've got Urban Decay Lounge. We've got Forbidden by Colored Rain. Oh my gosh, look at that. Oh, I'm gonna be swatching them out of order. And then this is Luxie Rage. Oh, look at those. How can I choose? How can I choose? Oh my gosh, this is so much harder than I expected it to be. So let's go in the order that I swatched them. So here's Urban Decay Lounge. Here's Colored Rain Forbidden. Holy smokes. And here is Luxie Rage. It's really tough, but I think that it's going to be Urban Decay Lounge for me because I bought it myself. I've had it for a long time. There's a huge dip in it. I think of it as like a standard in my collection. It's a shadow that I remember I have even when I'm not looking at my collection. It's just like it means something to me, and I also know that it makes an amazing look all over the lid. I've used these two quite a bit, but I've used them kind of like in combination with other things. And I feel like for this exercise, I can't justify keeping all 3 of them. Again, if I were only keeping 15, I might choose 2 out of the 3. But for just keeping 10, I think I'm going to put these up here in the like runner-up category, but I think we're going to go with Urban Decay Lounge. Okay, let's talk about these smoky olivey greens and golds. I feel like they all sort of go together. This is Luxie Orion, but I already know, okay, that's Luxie Orion, and then this is the Natasha Denona single that was given to me that's called Sienna. There's Orion and there's Sienna. If it's going to be one of them, it's going to be Sienna of the two of those, the one that's got a little more of a duochrome shift and a little more of a grungy undertone. So I'm going to go ahead and put that one aside and keep this one up here. And let's look at these three grungy olives. So we've got Defiance by Sydney Grace, we've got Herky Bird by Sydney Grace, and we've got Adept ACS 26. This is the kind of shade I really like putting all over my lids. There's the two Sydney Grace ones and the one by Adept. So the Adept one's browner and dirtier, and as much as I love these two, I feel like it's just a little bit more me. All three of them perform beautifully. Like, look at that shine. I think that it's gonna be this one from Adept though. Okay, so I've got 8. That means there's room for 2 more. And these are the 3 that we haven't addressed. So this is a ColourPop glitter. It's called Hungry Ghost. And it's one of my all-time favorite pressed products because it's just so intensely, I don't know, iridescent holographic. I find it so useful for putting under the brow bone. It's so extraordinary. It's got that sheen. I feel like maybe I was a little bit unfair to myself in putting glitter in because it's technically not eyeshadow. And I do use this on my face as well. You know what? I'm going to take this out. I feel like if I could only keep 10 of what's here, I would probably include it because, I mean, I pretty much have pan on that. Like, I use it so much. But it is really a separate category. It's not an eyeshadow. It's really a glitter. And I use it as such. So let's remove that from the running just to give myself a little bit more wiggle room. Here's what I'll say. I know that I would keep this one. This is 24/7 from the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette, and I've talked about this ad infinitum on my channel. It's a very strange eyeshadow. It's like a dry formula with micro glitters that give it that sheen. You can see it right there. Like, doesn't that look like incredibly high end? Like, doesn't that look like Victoria Beckham Beauty would have made it and not Jaclyn Hill X Morphe? Like, it's just got this sheeny, almost umber colored, I don't know, like base that buffs out. And it's so dry and sticky and difficult to buff out on the lids. It's so stiff that once it's on, it stays. And my eyes can water and water, and I can just have like, I could be in the rain, I could cry, and it wouldn't mess it up because it's so stiff and sturdy. So this is like a serious go-to shadow for me. You know what? I think I'm going to be fair to ColourPop Hungry Ghost and give it a place and give it its due. Because here's what happened. So I decided, as much as I really love these two and I would love to include them, I feel like when it comes to really intense glitter, sort of multi-chromes or like incredible glitter bomb shades, if I can only keep 10, I don't want to fill like half the spots with those. I want to just select a few that are really, really my top ones. So even though the colors are really different, like this, and this are really different from these two, just in terms of the way that I use them, they all fall into the same category. So I'm tempted by both of these, but I really feel like the position has been filled. And then these two were vying to be included. This is, again, Natasha Denona Sienna. This is Luxie Juno, which is just an extraordinary brown. It's almost like a semi-sheer brown with a really beautiful purpley pink sheen in it. And I love this eyeshadow. I mean, I love that eyeshadow. I use it a lot. It's very multi-purpose for me. I use it to darken my outer corner when I want looks to stay kind of soft. Oh my gosh, I'm kind of talking myself into it right now. Let's just say that The Natasha Denona shade didn't make it in because there are other kind of olive-y, sienna-y, shifty, all over lid shades. And it's just the kind of thing that it's like, as beautiful as it is, I don't think of it as a crown jewel. Maybe I should reach for it more often, but I just don't think of it as a crown jewel. So I really, really love this. I'm glad I don't have to give it up. It doesn't make it into the 10 that I would keep. So now it's down to these two. And you know what? I think, gosh, I feel like I've been sort of leaning on keeping shadows that I like use as all over lid shades or as middle of the lid shades, like accent shades. And I find that Luxie Juno is really special to me because I can use it to darken the outer corner, and it's got this kind of like soft sheer quality and glimmer, and it really like diffuses the look and makes it look smoky and rich without making it too dark. And that is really special to me. I think that this exact beautiful pan of eyeshadow is really special to me. I'm reverting to my original strategy of saving myself by saying that glitters aren't included in the competition. So Hungry Ghost is out again. And I'm gonna go with Luxie Juno, which does, even though I feel like there are a number of browns, like these are all sort of like the same, you know, mauvey, browny, sheeny thing. That's, it makes sense that there would be 3 different kinds of shadows in that category in the 10 that I would keep. So this is it. Do I have 10?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All right, let me go wash off my hands and arms and I'll swatch all these guys together. Okay, so here are the 10 eyeshadows, the 10 single eyeshadows that I would keep if I could only keep 10. We have Juno by Luxie Beauty. We have 24/7 by Jaclyn Hill X Morphe. We have Adept Cosmetics ACS 17, and we have Adept Cosmetics ACS 26. Well, the fact that those are the first 4 make me look they make me look like a real old fogey, don't they? But it's real. I'm being serious. I would pick these 4 kind of taupey browns with different undertones and finishes, and I would be happy for it. So so there. All right, next we have Urban Decay Lounge. We have JD Glow Unexpected. We have Cleona Grisaille, and we have Juvia's Place Nomad. There you can start to see my personality coming through a little bit more, or in a little bit more of a dynamic way. And then lastly, we have Corrosion from Cleona Cosmetics, and then we have this Summer Disco Shadow by Rowan Beauty. Let's put them all in a palette, except for the one from Rowan. Do you think they'll all fit? Of course they will all fit. What was I thinking? They all fit with room to spare. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put in some of the runners up into this little palette and just make my perfect little crazy grungy. What, Sadie? You wanna be in the video? If I could only keep one cat, I would keep Sadie. Okay, so of the runners up, we're definitely going to put back in Hungry Ghost. Let's also go ahead and put some of these really rich, amazing ones back in. I want to put Forbidden and Rage in there. I was really, really loving those when I was swatching them. I'm going to go ahead and add in Natasha Denona Sienna. Let's put in Sydney Grace Herky Bird. And we'll add Cleona Abrasion for a little bit of blue purple, because we haven't really had much. There's not really much variety in that direction on the color spectrum. And you know what? I'm gonna put in Orion from Luxie because it's the one that's the closest approximation color-wise to this one that I can't pop it out of this compact, so I can't put it in here. So in terms of like the color that this provided here, this one will kind of provide that. And then lastly, let's go with Blaze from Cleona because I've just been really enjoying using that shadow a lot lately to top off looks with this kind of reddish undertone. So there, I didn't have to only keep 10. If I could only keep 10, then the 10 are right here. But because I'm living in the real world and not in a fantasy world, well, like an anti-fantasy world where I'm only allowed to keep 10, I was able to make this little palette of dream eyeshadows. So this is going to have to go through my my impending declutter, but I'm sure I won't be decluttering any of these given that they were all runners up for the award of being one of the 10 that I would keep. But you'll see this little palette pretty soon because I'll be decluttering my shadows in a video pretty soon. All right, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. And I hope that you are remembering to take extra good care of yourself right now so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work.